Welcome to another edition of The Barking Dead.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of EPL on
Class is in session, hitting the books on Pub Sports.
This is another exciting edition of the main event on Talking Ant.
Class is in session, hitting the books, Pub Sports Radio. Monday, December the 5th, Ian Cameron and Conor Mac with you, and we are ready for college football bowl season. It is here. The regular season's over. Conference championship weekend is over. The bowl matchups have been decided. We know who the four playoff teams are going to be as well. So we are definitely excited for the college football bowl season. But before we get to that, we are going to start with Saturday, the one, the only game in college football taking place this Saturday. And for the last several years, they've done it this way. Basically had this game as the one and only game taking place on a Saturday in college football to give it the publicity, the spotlight that it deserves. And it is the annual Navy-Army game, always a special environment when this game takes place in Philadelphia. Navy-Army once again taking place this Saturday, coming up December the 10th. We've got in this one pretty close to a pick'em here in this game with Navy and Army. Right now, it is around pretty much pick 'em both sides. Army opened 1.5-point favorites here for this game, Lincoln Financial Field. How about this total, Conor Mac? 33, the total in this game, Navy and Army. And if I'm not mistaken, I just want to make sure I've got this right. We are on one hell of a under streak with this annual Army-Navy game. And that explains why this total is hell of a low as it is. When we are talking all kinds of one under after another between these two teams. Yes, 16 straight Army-Navy games have gone under the total going into this year's. That's 16 straight, if you can believe it. And that is why this total is as low as it is. So you have to make up your mind and say, have we gotten to the point where this total now is too low while it has gone under in 16 straight head-to-head meetings between Navy and Army? Look at where some of these totals have been. 55.5 in 2012, 49.5 in 2013, 55.5 in 2014. And then after that, we had a 50 in 2015, 46.5, 2016, 44.5, 2017, 38.5, 2018, 41.5, 2019, 36, 2020, and then last year was the lowest total of the bunch. And this is when I noticed we were really starting to, or odds makers were really starting to adjust to how low scoring this series has been. 35.5 was the closing total last year when these teams played, and it ended up 17-13 Navy. And I actually remember, Conor, last year's game, and it was actually 10-7 Army after the first quarter. And after that first quarter, I'm thinking, we're finally going to get a bloody over out of this series with these two teams. And sure enough, it slowed right down after that. Defenses took over. You got the traditional time-consuming, long drives that you typically get in a game between Army and Navy. And the next thing you know, it ended up still staying under the total with 30 points last year. So this is definitely under or pass. But I'm cautioning you right now, we're talking about the single lowest total by far that we have seen in the last 16 years. So again, we've had 16 straight unders, but this is by far the lowest total we have seen in a Navy-Army game during that span. Yet I'm not betting it over, even with this being the lowest total during that span. When you look at Army's defense, it shut down UMass. It was a little bit better in their last two games, but more than anything, it just feels like when you get these two teams playing one another, and the same thing goes for when Army plays Air Force and when Navy plays Air Force as well, the other service academy team. I mean, it's just consistently lower scoring games. The teams know how to defend the triple option. All these teams do. The drives are time consuming. You don't have as many possessions because both teams bleed the play clock on every play and run the football pretty much exclusively, and it's just the perfect recipe for unders. So I don't know if I'll bet the total under, but I'm certainly leaning that way, even with the low number of 33, because 16 straight unders, I'll be damned if I'm going against that kind of trend. As far as the side goes, I think Navy was starting to really play better football down the stretch. You look at the recent meetings, it's gone back and forth. Army won in 18, Navy won in 2019, Army won in 2020, Navy won last year. It's Army playing with revenge. Like, if you've been betting the team playing with revenge the following season, you've done pretty well. So that would have you pointing toward Army in this game. They have played a little bit better here in the last 2 games of the season, yet the early money's come in on Navy. And if you actually look at the way Navy's played down the stretch, I think I still lean Navy, even though it's Army looking to avenge the loss from last year, because I like the way Navy played down the stretch. They hung tough with Cincy. They hung tough with Notre Dame. They beat Central Florida, the final game of the season. And when I look at the strength of schedule, too, I mean, Army beat UMass and UConn. And UConn had a much improved season. But let's not forget that their wins came against lighter competition. So right now I'm leaning toward Navy in a game. I don't even know if I'll be betting the game, but I'll say right now I lean Navy and certainly lean under. What do you think, Connor?
Yeah, I don't know if I want to get involved in this game either. You ripped through it. I mean, there was the lowest total last year and still couldn't get there after scores right away in that first quarter. It's under. I just do you want to be that guy who's been 16 in a row and to take the over? I don't. I'd rather just watch this game and not bet it. The clock just bleeds so much with these two teams. It's just run. Next thing you know, it's halftime, and at the end of the game in the fourth quarter. I think Navy does have the tougher schedule, and maybe I lean to them, but I like their revenge a little bit. Like you were mentioning, kind of a back and forth. And I think Army's playing their best football right now towards the end of the year. So tough one, coin flip type game that I'll be watching. Right now I do not have a bet on. Under.
Yeah.
Don't
the
mess
under
around.
or nothing. Yeah, the under or nothing, even at 33, because again, we got 30 last year. 30 would be good for an under this year too, if that's all the points we see. And it's just got one of those makings. And I think if you look back too, earlier this year, Army played Air Force, Navy played Air Force, and I think both of those were unders as well. So it's just really remarkable that we just get low-scoring football when the service academy institutions end up playing one another. All right, so that is on Saturday, December the 10th, this Saturday, that game. We now move to the following Friday, December the 16th. It is the first day of bowl game action, and we will begin the bowl slate with the Bahamas Bowl, Thomas Robinson Stadium, Nassau, Bahamas, the Miami, Ohio Redhawks, and the UAB Blazers. We've got UAB 11-point favorites here, 44 being the total in this game. First thing that stands out to me is when we're talking about these early bowl games, if you're going to lay double digits with the favorite in these early bowl games, you better have a damn good reason for doing so. Because I find in the very early part of the bowl season, it's more of an underdog heavy, early bowl slate. I find the underdogs do well in the early bowl games. When you look at this game in particular, there are reasons to maybe endorse this double-digit underdog, Miami, Ohio. UAB just wasn't the same UAB team this year. Whether it was missing Bill Clark, not having him as head coach, whether it was that defense not playing as well as they have in years past, and clearly they did not. It was a big step down, in my opinion, from that UAB defense all season long. There were many factors that pointed to UAB just not being as good of a football team this year. They ended up going 6-6, mediocre by their standards, usually contending for Conference USA championships. They weren't even close to doing that this year. They do have a quarterback that's pretty experienced in Dylan Hopkins, a terrific running back in Dwayne McBride. No question about that. I think offensively, there's still a very capable team. And they've trended over the total, by the way, down the stretch of the regular season. 4 straight overs with a pretty good offense still, and especially with Hopkins back from that injury that he suffered early in the year with McBride, the running back. They are definitely a good enough offensive team. As far as Miami O is concerned, this is a team that even when they got their quarterback returning from injury late in the season, he kind of struggled. Then he got banged up again, and then Avion Smith had to take over. So, it was definitely an injury-marred season for Brett Gabbert. Avion Smith, who's more of a dual threat. He's not the greatest throwing quarterback, but he's obviously got some athleticism. It'll be interesting to see here what Miami O does at the quarterback position for this game, knowing that Brett Gabbert remained in and out, it seemed constantly down the stretch due to some injuries. So that's something you're going to want to monitor. And again, as we record this, we're still about a week and a half away from this bowl game taking place. So that's probably information you're going to be getting closer to bowl game. We'll have to wait and see. Brett Gabbert right now is questionable. And apparently, from what I see, I'm just reading some things now on this.
I heard he's gone.
Intentions to enter the transfer portal.
Yes.
From what I've seen. So that probably means he's out. It means he's probably not going to be there around for the bowl game, not going to start. So you got to expect it's probably Avion Smith that's going to be the starting quarterback for Miami O in this game. So that means you've really got to focus on UAB's run defense, because UAB's run defense is probably going to be what's tested more. Miami O has been more of a run-heavy offense, and this quarterback is known more for being able to run than throw. And UAB's run defense is a little suspect. 171 rushing yards per game allowed, 94th in the country. That's not necessarily something you want to see. So, my early lean, and this is what we're going to give you today with these bowl game matchups announced just yesterday. The lines just coming out for them late last night, early this morning. These are just initial leans for us. Nothing maybe that we're strong on. There's actually a couple that I've locked in already. But other than that, these are just initial leans where we think we might be betting as of right now. And right now, I would look at Miami O or nothing. I really am not interested in laying 11.5 with this UAB Blazers team, with the defensive concerns that I have for them, a team that, used to playing for better, not bigger bowl games, but used to having better seasons than this. I find it's a little bit of a team that's a difficult one to lay these kind of points with. And the Miami O defense actually was pretty solid down the stretch, other than getting ripped apart by that good Ohio offense. We saw them, hang in there, play some good defense in MAC play. Let's not forget they also have a win against Northwestern. I know Northwestern was terrible this year, but they beat Northwestern. They covered in defeat against Cincinnati on this Miami O schedule. Strength of schedule wise, I think when you look at the non-conference, and that should be something that you factor into your handicap as well, especially with the early bowl games. Who did these teams play in non-conference play? You played Cincinnati, you played a couple of tough teams, Miami O, in the non-conference that might have you better prepared for a game of this magnitude. Like Miami O played Northwestern, they played Cincinnati, they played Kentucky early in the year. And then you counter that with what UAB faced. They faced Liberty, and that's pretty much it in terms of anybody that really was tough for them in terms of non-conference football this year. So I think it just strengthens the case to maybe take the plus 11.5 even more with Miami O in this game. Connor, what do you think here? Bahamas Bowl.
Let's get to it, because this is the first bowl game that we're talking about. And it'll be, whatever it is, 11 days from now. You hit it right from the head. We're jumping on this right away to give out our leans, because I feel in these bowl games, and I probably mentioned a couple of other times in the show, because we got to hear so many players are in and out, depending on the teams who are going through. Motivation is always huge in a game like this too, in the Bahamas. Let's look at the UAB side. The interim coach, like you mentioned, Clark was in, Vincent took over. Now they hired Dilfer. I mean, I heard that locker room's kind of split. They, like, a lot of those kids didn't like the hire, but some people did. The athletic department, they all liked the hire. So that's interesting. So you got to be just motivation in this one. And I think the points right here are valuable with Miami, Ohio a little bit right now as we look at it. They just, they're a MAC team that's the classic 5-6, or they just go 6-6, 5-7. They don't do much well, but I think they stay in ball games, and their defense is hung around, and they've done that kind of all year long. And I think this is and I really love this. We were getting almost 2 touchdowns. We feel great, Miami, Ohio. And I think this number's just about right from 11 to 13. But I don't think UAB brings their A game, and we will see. I like to hear you get a good reports out of this, because we get a long time. You know this, Ian. We get usually some good stuff coming out of what team's really motivated and what's not, who's playing, do they really give a shit, what's going on. So if I hear any of that from this UAB team, I'll be all over Miami, Ohio here in the Bahamas Bowl week.
All right, we move on to the next bowl game on that Friday, December 16th, the Cure Bowl in Orlando, Florida. Troy and UTSA. It's actually one of the better early bowl games in terms of the matchup. A high-flying offense and an excellent defense going head-to-head here. Great matchup. We've got UTSA, 1.5-point favorites in this game, 55 being the total here in this one. It's a really interesting matchup when you look at it. UTSA coming off the Conference USA Championship, Troy coming off the Sun Belt Championship, both of them winning their conference title games. Should be enthusiastic about playing in the bowl game. I don't think motivation is going to be a big concern for either of these teams when you look at it, because they're coming off conference championship games. As far as UTSA is concerned, under Jeff Traylor, we saw them in their bowl game last year against San Diego State, come up short, losing by a score of 38-24 in that game. So even though they were excited, and I remember I thought UTSA excited to be here, but they couldn't match up with San Diego State in that game. They end up losing their bowl game. For Troy, it is a squad that obviously had some tough times under Chip Lindsey. They didn't even qualify Troy for a bowl game each of the last 2 seasons, Connor. You've got to believe they're fired up to be bowling again. So, I would think motivation is not so much the concern or the factor. There's going to be games where there's a huge motivational edge and we really care about being in this game and we are excited to be here. There's going to be various games where there's a major edge for one team over the other in that motivational category. I don't think we're going to have that here. I think both teams are going to be into this, excited to play. When I look at this matchup too, I'm interested in just taking the points with the better defense. I always am. Again, this is a good matchup to look at as well, how these teams played in terms of non-conference football. I think that's very important. Get a gauge of where they tested, outside of their own conference. And when you look at UTSA, you played Houston, you played Texas. That's not bad in terms of quality non-conference opponents early in the season. Troy had their share of pretty solid opponents early in the year. They had to start the year playing Ole Miss out of the SEC. So both of these teams have played pretty good Power 5 teams when you look at it. Texas is the highlight tough team that UTSA played, and Ole Miss is probably the highlight team that Troy played as well. So really tough game. This is a great game to watch. You've got Frank Harris and that outstanding offense of UTSA going up against the strength of Troy, which all year was that defense. And the thing with Troy as well that I want to point out with their defense is they were in particular an awesome run defense. They were a little bit, not a huge amount, but they were a little bit more vulnerable in the passing game. And that's significant because UTSA has become a pass-heavy offense this year because they lost Sincere McCormick. Frank Harris got better as a passing quarterback, and their strength was in the receiving core and the passing game. And so they became a very pass-heavy offense here. So, my initial lean, believe it or not, is over the total. 55.5. I think UTSA's pass-heavy offense, if there's a slight weakness in Troy's defense, they are slightly weaker in terms of defending the pass compared to defending the run. That's not optimal going up against the Roadrunners. And on the flip side, I think Troy's offense, some of that maybe was Coastal Carolina. It was just horrendous defensively in the Sun Belt title game. But Troy's offense looked like they got themselves going quite a bit. And UTSA will give up yards. And Gunnar Watson finally, threw the football with a great deal of success. It's not very much of a passing game we trust, but he had 318 yards through the air against Coastal Carolina. We know they've got Vidal to run the football, keep them balanced, and UTSA's defense, I think, might have some trouble with that. So the way you look at it, this could be a high total for a Troy game. It's also, to me, more importantly, a very low total for a UTSA game with how explosive they can be. And don't forget, extra time to get ready for this bowl game. Don't put it past the coaches to have some tricks and wrinkles in the playbook offensively for either of these sides. So right now I'm looking toward the over. I think the side is very tough for me to take either of these teams because I think they're both good and I think they're both showing up to play here. What do you think here, Connor? Cure Bowl.
Yeah, this game I think should be a pretty good one. Both teams took care of business. Troy just stepped all over. The 31-0 in that game. It seemed so quick. It was just over, and it was. And shout out to UTSA for getting it done. Austin Aune, interceptions, we talked about it, bit him in the ass for the old man there. Yeah, so that got it done for UTSA. You know what I saw down the stretch, though? This total's interesting. And a lot of these bowl games, I'm going to wait a little bit. I know we're doing this show now, but on totals, I want to get a little bit more of a feel Obviously, I like Troy unders. Their offense has come alive. They played some real shitty teams down the stretch, but they've gotten it done. I thought UTSA's defense has looked a little bit better as the year's gone on, against bad teams as well. So this total, I think, could go either way. I mean, initially when I see this, I lean under with a Troy game, but I'll wait on it a little bit. And I lean Troy a little bit just because of the better defense in the end. You know, the X factors to me on the UTSA side is Harris. The guy's just phenomenal, great quarterback, put a team on his back and lead a drive. So I think this game's close. So I'd want the points if I had to be on a side here.
All right, next up, we've got the Fenway Bowl. We moved to Saturday, December 17th for these games. The Fenway Bowl, Fenway Park, Boston, Mass, Louisville, Cincinnati. Louisville 2.5-point favorites, 45 the total. What a crazy situation here unfolding. We know Cincinnati has already lost Luke Fickell, their head coach. Of course, he no longer at Cincinnati, moving on, taking on the Wisconsin head coaching job there, moving on to be with the Badgers. And isn't it amazing that we're now hearing reports just earlier this morning that Louisville's current head coach, Scott Satterfield, is likely the candidate to take over as the Cincinnati Bearcats head coach. And these two teams just happen to be playing each other here in the Fenway Bowl on Saturday, December 17th. So talk about a weird situation here. He basically is going to get a chance to oversee his new team, the Cincinnati Bearcats, because it looks like it's fait accompli that Scott Satterfield is going to be the head coach of Cincinnati and try to take out his old team, the Louisville Cardinals. So, and these are situations that are always dicey with betting bowl games, the early ones especially. The coaching changes, guys that are moving on to other places, because a lot of times it's not only the head coach that's on the move. He's taken his coordinators with him. He's taken his coaching staff with him. He's taken some of the players even with him, and it leaves it all up in the air in terms of who's going to coach the game, who's going to call plays for the game offensively, defensively, and who's going to play in the game when you see these moving, musical chair situations in terms of coaching uprooting. So that's something to factor in here with Cincinnati, obviously with Fickell gone, and obviously with Louisville. Now it looks like Satterfield's on his way to Cincinnati. So it makes this very, very tricky early on. You want to wait and see if you get a real clear sense. Who's coaching, who's calling plays, who's playing from a starting perspective, starting offense, starting defense. So I'm not going to give you too much on this game because there's just so much up in the air. I think if all things were equal, let's say there was no coaching changes, everybody that's available to play for these two teams would play, I'd probably still lean towards Cincinnati because I think that team I trust a little bit more, especially in terms of defense. Louisville's defense comes and goes. The Louisville team, when I look at it, when it's Cincinnati defensively, can I think stymie a little bit what Louisville wants to do offensively in this game? I would lean Cincinnati if everybody was there and present, but that's obviously not going to be the case anymore. Connor, Fenway Bowl, what do you think?
Yeah, Fenway Bowl here. See, this line's already moved. I see 2.5s now everywhere. Maybe it keeps moving. If I can get over 3, I'm going to look, Cincinnati's way here. I'm right with you. I've had trouble, my struggles with Louisville. It's just been what team comes to play here and how motivated will they be? I have no idea. Especially you talk about with the coaching changes on both sides. This one's a wait and see for me for sure. But I'd look Cincinnati. I already like the 2.5. I hopefully maybe I get 3. I'd look that way. I think this game is close either way.
You will probably see an interim coach coaching Louisville probably for this bowl game. But again, to be determined, Definitely still up in the air right now. All right, let's go to the New Mexico Bowl. This is also on Saturday, December 17th. BYU, SMU in Albuquerque, home of the Lobos, of course, play there. We've got BYU 1.5-point favorites, 74 being the total. Very high total, as you'd expect from two teams that should be able to put up points in this game. BYU, a very strange season for them. 7-5, some ups, some downs, but they did finish the season pretty well. I mean, they won 3 straight to close out the year against Boise State. A nice win there in Boise. They beat up on Utah Tech. I don't want to put too much into that. It was an FCS opponent, but then they beat Stanford 35-26 and really dominated that game. Final score was closer than the actual game, the way it played out. And look, that offense with Jaron Hall at quarterback's been very impressive. There's no question, 440 total yards of offense, most of it through the air this year. They weren't able to run the football nearly as well here going into this game, but they might be able to do what they want against SMU. This is an SMU defense that down the stretch of the regular season, we saw them give up 63 to Houston, 34 to Tulsa, 59 to Tulane, 31 to Memphis. So you understand why this total is very high. Is it too high? That's the question. I would certainly only consider the over, but we are talking a 74 as far as the total goes in this game. Very, very high, although it is worth noting BYU played a run-heavy Arkansas team early in the season and 52-35. That game still got to 87 points. So with two teams that are going to throw the ball, I think BYU knows that their passing offense has been their strength. They throw it more than they usually do, and SMU will do that with Tanner Mordecai and the solid receiving core that he has. I know they have a decent running back too. Obviously, Levine's been solid for them this year, but they've got a great receiving core with Curley and especially Rashee Rice for this SMU team. So they're going to air it out. And we know this BYU team defensively hasn't been as good this year. So I would certainly consider the over, but it is a high number. As far as the side goes in this one, not a strong opinion right now, but you got to think in the trenches. BYU's been a little bit weak there, but this might be an opponent they might be able to have an advantage of in the trenches. So I guess the lean for me is BYU, but I'd probably prefer looking at a high-scoring shootout more. And if you don't like the 74, you can always wait for a live in-game number. Maybe it gets off to a slow start, and you'll get a better number with the total live in-game. What do you think here, Connor? SMU, BYU?
And the great thing you just touched on is a lot of these games we'll be watching. You know what I mean? If you don't have a crazy play, at the start, play it live. And this could be one here. You know what? I like SMU. I'd like them as a little bit bigger dog, but I still think them in small points here, a couple, I think, might be good. I didn't like how BYU finished the year. I know they beat Stanford at the very end, but you mentioned they got manhandled at the line of scrimmage, especially towards the end of the season here. This line moving up to 74 and a half, man, that's a ton. That is a shit ton of points. I'm not taking the over right now. I mean, this is a wait. I'd be on the under if I were just so many points. I mean, you're going to have to get, 40, 36, some bullshit like that, which could happen in this bowl game. But I liked SMU in some of their bigger games where they faltered last year, at least. They did get their ass whipped by Tulane, but they handled, whether it's Memphis, beat South Florida easy, then that big shootout versus Houston where there was, the record points, took care of business there versus Tulsa. They only lost by 2 to Cincy. I thought they played solid all year with Mordecai. I think they have the weapons. I just don't trust them. That's the problem here. I just don't. Last few years, I just haven't trusted SMU at all. So should be a good one. This is one I'm going to wait on too.
All right. As we continue along here, we've got the next up. It is the Las Vegas. No, it's the LA Bowl, SoFi Stadium here in Inglewood, California. Fresno State and Washington State. Washington State 2.5-point favorites here, 53.5 being the total in this game. Fresno State, congrats to them and thanks to them because I was on them against Boise State in the Mountain West Championship game. Slow start for Jake Hayner, but once he got it going, and once that offense got it going against Boise, there was no stopping them. They played very well for a large part of that remaining part of that game, and they ended up getting a nice victory in the Mountain West Championship game, 28-16 victory for Fresno State over Boise State. Washington State actually ended the season pretty solidly, 3 wins in their last 4 games, although they did lose the Apple Cup in their final regular season game, 51-33 to Washington. So they'll be looking to bounce back from that. As far as these two teams are concerned, you've got Fresno State once again in a bowl game this year, something that I'm sure will excite them quite a bit going into this one after a tough season last year. And when you look at it too for Washington State, I'd expect enthusiasm here for them for this bowl game. Washington State last year, they played that bowl game against Central Michigan. They ended up losing at 24-21 in that bowl game that they appeared in last year. And of course, 2 years ago, they weren't in a bowl game at all. 3 years ago, they were in one against Air Force and they lost 31-21. They've actually had a bad track record. And this goes back to when Mike Leach coached Washington State years ago. They've got a pretty bad track record, actually, in bowl games. Now, I don't want to attach that stigma to this team because every year you're talking about a different team. But the fact remains, Washington State's been a bad bet in bowl games for years. And I think when you look at this Fresno team, they have been very strong, winning games, covering point spreads, really ever since Jake Haener came back. I'm interested in them as a slight underdog right now in this game against Washington State. My early lean definitely to the Bulldogs. What do you think here, Conor Mac?
I think this one should be good. Yeah, shout out to Fresno. I thought they were the better team, and they went into Boise and got it done. A lot of 2.5s that I see now. Still, I think Fresno, I think they want one bad. Not a lot of distractions. Win down the stretch. Then the big one was Boise. You got to think they're just loose here. And Washington State kind of scuffling down the little bit of the stretch and losing to Washington. This Washington State team I thought was pretty good defensively, except some of the passing teams, whether it was Washington, Oregon, their defense kind of got ripped apart. So I think if Haener can get it going, they could have a problem. But one thing, this total has gone up. Maybe that initially was good, but I think if we start getting 55 or 56, I'm going to look the other way. I was impressed how Fresno's defenses play. I thought they were impressed against Boise.
Me too.
And and Oregon's, Washington State, in other of those blowout games, the defense was pretty good, opportunistic at times against some of the other teams. So that's their crazy speed fast here, get up and go. I kind of look under. If this keeps going up and up and up in the total, I'm going to look to the under. And I look the Bulldogs a little bit as well. The struggles of Washington State, in the bowl games hasn't been great. So I think the Bulldogs get it done here, a little loose. Jake Haener and this team ended well.
You also have to factor in a great passing offense, 27th in the country, 269 passing yards per game for Fresno. Of course, those numbers went up instantly when Haener returned from injury. Washington State secondary got gashed repeatedly, 112 in the country in pass defense, Washington State.
Yeah.
And I remember, and look, Michael Penix Jr. in that Apple Cup did a number on that Washington State secondary. They could not stop the Huskies passing game, and it's a concern matchup-wise for Washington State here in this game in the LA Bowl as they take on Fresno.
Ward, too, is a key. Real quick,
Cam
he's
Ward.
a key.
Yep.
Yes, He has just been hit and miss. If he's off throwing a few interceptions, that would be rough for Washington State. When he's been clean, he controls the game, and the offense kind of moves. But that'll be interesting in this matchup, too.
Yeah, no doubt. Great matchup. I'm looking forward to that one. LendingTree Bowl next up. This one taking place also Saturday, December 17th, Mobile, Alabama. We've got Southern Miss 6-point favorites here, 48 being the total in this game. There is no question Southern Miss is psyched to be in a bowl game because this is a program that's been in rough shape the last few years, some lean years, some down years. There's no doubt there will not be lack of motivation and excitement for Southern Miss for this game, and that's what you want. Right away, I've got Southern Miss circled. Like, they are going to be excited. They're back in a bowl game, and this is a very good defensive team. I want to back them. And I don't love backing a lot of the favorites, especially when they're laying more than a field goal early in bowl season. But I'm telling you what, to me, I just feel like Southern Miss is going to be excited. I certainly lean to them. The question is, whenever you lay points with Southern Miss, are they going to be able to put up enough offensively? That's always been their question mark this year. The quarterback play was spotty for much of the year. And remember, they had, guys in and out at the quarterback position. They had Wilkie for a bit. They finished the season with Trey Lowe at the quarterback spot in that final game against Monroe. They're a run-heavy offense, run-first offense anyway with Frank Gore Jr., who's kidding who, and he's obviously a terrific player. And when you look at this Rice defense, Conor Mac, putrid against the run, absolutely putrid. And I think that's going to allow Frank Gore, if you have access and books post Frank Gore Jr. rushing props for this bowl game, and I think a lot of books will have bowl game props, that's definitely something I'm looking at here because he should be able to run with great deal of success against this Rice run defense in this game. And the Rice defense in general obviously has had their share of issues, giving up 41, 56, 30, 45, 41 in 5 of their last 6 games. Somehow they only held North Texas to 21 points. They did a better job in their final game, allowed them to cover. But remember, there was a lot of wind. It was a bad weather game, that Rice-North Texas game. I think that slowed down North Texas's offense maybe even more than the Rice defense did. So I don't want to give them too much credit for that. I'm certainly leaning to laying the points here early on as we look toward this Rice-Southern Miss game. Much better defensive team, Southern Miss as well, and a team that I think is excited and enthusiastic to be playing in a bowl game, any bowl game, including this one. What do you think here, Connor?
This number is, it's perfect number here, I think. It's like 6, right where it needs to be, because I need more points with Rice. I need more than a touchdown with this team, but I'm not running to the other side crazy. Even though I do think Southern Miss wins this game, it's just their struggles on offense. I don't want a team and they got to cover by a touchdown, laying my money on that. You mentioned it slow. They run it well. They should run it on Rice. The problem is the clock will tick, because you think this total is low or a Rice game. Their games went under. I thought maybe their defense got a little bit better. They're not playing great teams here, but the overs for Rice kind of slowed down towards the end of the season. So tough for me in this one. Could go either way. I lean Southern Miss. I don't want to lay 6, though. So I'm off in the end right now.
All right. Good stuff. I actually lean to the over here. I'm still on this kick with Rice overs. It's a low total. Southern Miss has time to prepare an offense for this game against a weaker defense that they should be able to run on. And I think the Rice offense, even against the superior defense in this game, can do enough. And we're only talking 48.5 here. We're not talking a very high total, 48 now in some spots. So I'm kind of leaning over this total, and I think it can get there.
Yeah. Only 2 games I was going through. Southern Miss win over this total, maybe 3, and then Rice, just that Texas game, that North Texas, and the FAU game earlier, it was a 17-14. Other than that, they would all get over this number. Even a 41-10 type game, would all get there. So interesting clash here between these two teams. One and under, one towards the over. So yeah.
And even Southern Miss, for as much as they were trending under early on, 4 of their last 5 games to finish the season went over the total, Southern Miss. The ULL game was 39-24, 42-14 with Georgia State, 26-23 with Coastal, 27-20 with South Alabama, and then the one under was the Monroe game at the end of the season. So I think that total is low enough. We could see it just get over that number. All right, you're back of the backyard, Conor Mac, Las Vegas Bowl, Allegiant Stadium, Florida Gators, Oregon State Beavers, and we have Oregon State now 8.5 even in some spots. Favorites in this game, 54 being the total in this one. Huge move toward the Oregon State side, which means we definitely are going to have probably personnel issues galore here with Florida. And Florida's been one of those teams in the past where they've had, players opting out of the bowl game. So that's important to point that out in this one. We'll have to see who's going to be available for their respective teams. As far as Florida is concerned right now, I'm already looking at it, their receiving core, and I'm seeing a bunch of guys already, out declaring for NFL draft. Justin Shorter, a ton of their receivers, either injured or declaring already for the NFL draft. And usually when that happens, they sit out of the bowl game more often than not. So this looks like it's personnel related, where Florida just might be going there for a vacation, not necessarily to win a bowl game. Oregon State on the other side, even if Florida was fully motivated, you know how much I love this Oregon State team, and they've cashed tickets for us. They are on an unbelievable run to finish the season, 6-1 straight up, 6-1 against the spread as well for Oregon State in their last 7 games. I think this defense has just been so much better than we've seen in recent years from the Beavers. And of course, when Anthony Richardson, as of right now, looks like he's going to play at quarterback for Florida. The key for Oregon State is containing that run game of Florida. That's the key to success. And they've been a very, very good run defense, Oregon State. 114 rushing yards per game allowed, 20th in the country against the run. So from a matchup standpoint, I think it works well for Oregon State. So I understand the money move. It's up to 8.5 now. It might be too much to lay maybe at this point, but I understand it. Florida, motivation concerns, guys injured, guys opting out, and Oregon State, probably enthusiastic to play and win a bowl game after the season they had. Could there be a little letdown after winning the Civil War at the end of the year? Maybe, but I understand why people are endorsing Oregon State here early on in the betting action. What do you think here, Connor? Florida, Oregon State.
This was the problem, though. If you got in early, I think you were good here, under the touchdown. Now we're over. We even saw, this Florida State team that we were, playing good football. Florida still moved the ball on them all game long and, was a touchdown there. The personnel is the biggest thing. I mean, how many guys will be out, especially of the playmakers? I think this back and forth. I think now it's too many points. Still is Florida. Disappointing 6-6 year. But we know Oregon State, they're not at home. Little different team.
Good
here.
underdogs too, Florida. Covered against Florida State, let's not forget.
Yeah, they covered that game, 45-38. I thought they were in it from the beginning. I thought it was a good back and forth game all game long there. So the defense will give up points, I think. I kind of lean over. I don't know. This is another one I need to look into a little bit more with all the people out. But all that I've seen with Florida, that's where I lean. And we know Oregon State can get a shootout. Their defense has been very good. Oregon State, pretty good all year long. We'll see if Richardson plays, all that good stuff. And on the other side, like we mentioned, Oregon State, hand the ball off. Culberson, he did good coming in. It's kind of like he slowed down. Can he turn it back on since, here in this one? So it'll be interesting, the Beavers passing attack. So this should be a good one, but now it's out of the range for me. I got to go the other way. I don't love doing that because I see all these points in this move. Something's going on, obviously, and we know about it with the players with Florida, but they're still Florida, and I think this game could be within a touchdown.
Yeah, it's interesting. Has it moved too much? That's the question you have to ask yourself. All right, the final game for Saturday, December the 17th, rather, the Frisco Bowl, Frisco, Texas, Boise State, North Texas. Boise State 9-point favorites here, 55.5 the total. Right away, I'm not looking to lay this number with Boise. This is one of those teams where I've got them circled as questionable motivation, right? You're off the Mountain West Championship game loss, disappointing to lose that game. How excited are you to be going to Frisco, Texas here? And North Texas playing close to home. They're obviously in their home state and maybe have a better following. But the one little fly in the ointment here, the firing of Seth Luttrell as head coach of North Texas. Where does that leave North Texas's coaching staff? Who's calling plays? All of that stuff. Where are they going to go from a coaching stand? And, coaching disruptions are always a negative. So while I lean North Texas, let's see how things are closer to kickoff. Who's going to play? Who's sticking around to play in this bowl game for North Texas? And who's going to be the interim coach? Who's calling plays? All of that up in the air. So, like I say, I've got Boise circle as a bet against a team I want to fade here in the bowl game because of them coming off the Mountain West title game loss. I don't trust them. And the more I see of Taylon Green, the worse he's getting. Remember, it was that great start for him taking over at quarterback for Boise after the transfer out of Hank Bachmeier, and everything was good early on with Dirk Cutter as well as the new offensive coordinator. But that offense hasn't been clicking as much the last few weeks for Boise either. So we'll have to wait and see. I'll tell you what, if Boise's flat and North Texas has some motivational issues too and influx with the coaching staff, they could be a little discombobulated. Maybe the game could stay under the total, perhaps, actually, at 54.5. So maybe an early lean that way as well. Like I say, I want to take North Texas in the points here, and I want to flesh out this situation with Luttrell getting canned. Who's going to be on the sideline for this game? Who's going to stick around and play in this bowl game for North Texas in light of this? All of that, want to determine it before I go to the betting window. What do you think here, Connor?
One of the ones last night that I checked off question marks I put everywhere, on this football game, even from the total to a game like this in Texas, Frisco, Texas, middle of December, could it be windy, freezing cold? So that's another weight. We're still, days out here, almost 2 weeks. But you're right. This maybe could stay under. Boise, the better team, but the motivation after the loss, like you mentioned, that's what I had down last week. They should be able to score on this North Texas defense. But yeah, the motivation's always so key in these bowl games. It's tough. Initially, right now, I do lean North Texas. I want more, though. I don't know if this is enough at this number. So lean North Texas, but a wait and see here.
there's no denying it. There is definitely a huge defensive advantage for Boise. Boise's the much better defensive team than North Texas, but I've seen this before where situations where you've got a team that you don't know if their heads are fully wrapped up in the game. That's another thing to do. Look at the Boise State, local scribes, people that follow this team. Try to get some kind of Dr. Fraser Crane level of psychiatric insight to whether or not this team's locked in, Boise, for this bowl game, because I have doubts that they are. Just my initial thought. Like, I have no idea. I haven't heard quotes or specific players or coaches comment, but just my thought that after losing that Mountain West championship game, is this team going to be just totally invested in the Frisco Bowl here? I'm not so sure.
Yeah, and that's the key with these.
Yeah.
Like, we got to wait.
Yeah.
And this is as much digging as we go week to week college football. You look to those, but this really matters in these bowl games. I found out over the 15, 20 years or so. Yeah, for sure.
All right, that's Saturday, December 17th. We now move to Monday, December 19th. It's the only bowl game on Monday, December 19th. It's the Myrtle Beach Bowl, home of the Coastal Carolina Chanticleers, Conway, South Carolina, UConn, and Marshall. Marshall 10.5 point favorites, 40 the total. I'll tell you what, of all the early bowl games we've talked about, all of them so far, this is one of the stronger opinions I've got, like with conviction, where I know I like this side. I know I'm going to be betting this side right here, right now. And that's taking the points with UConn. I know this team's going to be fired up for this. They wanted to be in a bowl game. They played like it down the stretch. It was already a positive step in the right direction first season for Jim Mora Jr. As head coach of the UConn Huskies. And I think this team's going to play like it on the football field. You talk about motivation, want to go out there and show out and play well. I think you're going to get that from UConn. And it's a UConn team that, again, for the most part down the stretch, this is a team that played really good football, competitive football. Defense not perfect, but they got better, as the season progressed. They got Zion Turner back at the quarterback spot, and we saw that offense start to pick things up. So for this UConn team to be 6-6, it was a very impressive feat. They had a rough finish to the season against Army. It's always a tricky matchup when you're trying to prepare on the fly for the triple option. But no, I like what I saw from this UConn team. Other than the Army result, this was a good team in the underdog role, especially when getting double digits down the stretch. And look, they finished the season 7-1 against the spread in their last 8 games down the stretch. As for Marshall, we've got a team that really for most of the season struggled offensively. They did start to get some offensive life back in their system late in the season. They put up 23, 28, 28 the last 3 games. Some of those defenses are weak. App State's defense kind of folded down the stretch. Georgia Southern defense was hit or miss, and Georgia State's defense certainly wasn't very good all season long. So definitely some concerns there that, Marshall offensively picked it up with Fancher at quarterback, but it's not like they played a bunch of great defenses either down the stretch. As far as UConn goes, you look at their offense here. Marshall's defense is pretty solid. And will UConn be able to move the football enough against them is the question. But I think when you look at this Marshall Thundering Herd team, very one-dimensional, run the football. They don't have much of a passing game. You give UConn this opportunity to prepare something for a team that's, I think, very dubious as double-digit favorites. We've seen Marshall, Conor Mac, double-digit favorites this season, I believe, on 3 different occasions. No, I'm looking at it now. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 times this year, Marshall has been a double-digit favorite. The only cover was against Norfolk State as a double-digit favorite. They were double-digit chalk at Bowling Green, 17-point favorites. They lost the game outright. They were 31-point favorites against Gardner-Webb. They did not cover there, 28-7. And they were 10.5-point favorites against UL Lafayette, and the Cajuns beat them outright in that game. This has not been a good double-digit favorite. Now asking them to lay double digits against a fired-up UConn team, and I think they will be for this game. I like the Huskies plus the points. Conor Mac, Myrtle Beach Bowl.
So do I. This is just, if you're betting Marshall, laying these points, it just hasn't been profitable. I don't know what's going to change here in this bowl game. How motivated will this Marshall team be? 2 good defenses. Marshall, really, really good. I thought UConn's been good. That's why the disrespect. We see this low total at 40, and we're getting over 10 points, with UConn here. We know UConn struggles to score, but all these defensive numbers just outside the 50 mark, usually that's right where UConn, a lot of these numbers are for them. So I think they stay in this game. I just don't see a Marshall team really running it up. When I was going through this last night, I just need UConn. You know what's been big with them? A turnover or a punt return. Like they might need that here to stay in this game, but I think they can do it. I think they'll be pumped up. And you mentioned Moore. I think he's done a good job to take how bad this football program was the last couple of years. To go to a bowl game, they should be hyped, like you mentioned. So this was a play on that I had circled too last night. So I like the points here with Huskies.
All right, we go to the Tuesday, December 20th bowl slate. We got 2 games on that day, Tuesday, December 20th, starting with the famous Idaho Potato Bowl. Of course, Boise, Idaho, home of the Boise State Broncos. The blue turf game, we always know the Potato Bowl has been there for years, if not decades now, that Potato Bowl in Boise. Eastern Michigan, San Jose State. San Jose State, 4.5-point favorites, 53 the total in this one. I got to lean to the EMU side, Eastern Michigan. Their Eastern Michigan games, it's uncanny, the underdog. Just take the underdog, and you're doing quite well. And I don't like the way San Jose State finished the season. They kind of looked like they were going through the emotional scars, if you will. They had a tragedy in the team with the death of that player that they lost his life, and they looked like they were a little mentally shaken from that. Who wouldn't be? I mean, obviously it's a tough situation to go through, but they never truly regrouped from that. The Hawaii game was better. They did play a little bit better to end the season, 27-14, but they finished the season just burning money for backers of theirs, 0-6 against the spread for San Jose State down the stretch. And a defense that at times shown some vulnerability. And I like the way Eastern Michigan finished the year. They beat Ball State. They probably should have beat Toledo for their only loss. Toledo ended up, of course, being the champions of the MAC. Akron, they beat them. Kent State, they won outright as dogs against them. They beat up Central Michigan in their final game. This Eastern Michigan team really showed me something down the stretch. They're in a point spread role that is preferred, catching points. They've been good in this role. Taylor Powell, the Troy and Missouri quarterback transfer, I thought he played better and better down the stretch. You pair him with Samson Evans, the running back. They've got a nice little punch there, throwing the ball, running it. I like the points here with EMU. What do you think, Connor?
They're a dog. I mean, this just seems perfect. Going back weeks, though, like if you're just going back 4 weeks, I'd have been like, I need more than a touchdown. But maybe I don't. I'm a little bit paused, but like I just said, how can you not want to look the Eastern Michigan way? If this San Jose plays like it did earlier, or Cordero plays to his ability, I think they could win by a touchdown. But I'm not banking on it after everything that's happened. I mean, Hawaii got better. I still wasn't impressed with that win. I saw some of it too, that 27-14 win. I wasn't. Will they be pumped up for this one? I'm not so sure. It should be cold as all hell. That'll help Eastern Michigan. So, yeah, as I always say, they don't do really anything great, and I think they'll be around in this one. So I'll take the points too.
Yeah, I'd be shocked if we get the nice weather in December that we got in Boise for the Mountain West Championship game. I'll be shocked if that repeats itself here. Closer to Christmas here for the Potato Bowl. By the way, I remember Brent Brennan's done a great job here at San Jose State. Make no mistake about it. He's done a great coaching job, turned it around. Chevin Cordero, by the way, is a capable quarterback, but again, the defense was shaky down the stretch. But I remember the last time they were in a bowl game, they had that magical season, right? I think that was the year they won the Mountain West Championship game, the COVID year. And they were going into their bowl game, and they were a flop. And Brent Brennan was a flop in the bowl game. They lost to Ball State a couple of years ago in the bowl game, and they got destroyed in that game as 9.5-point favorites, a MAC team as well. So
wasn't it like 50 or something?
Yeah,
I mean, they blew him out. He was in Vegas.
34-13 it was. Yeah.
Man, it felt worse.
Yeah. Like they were a flop. They were a no-show in the bowl game. And I'm not saying they're going to be here, but it's another log thrown onto the fire, if you will, as to why I'm leaning toward Eastern Michigan here. Plus the points in this game. And Creighton's been a pretty solid bowl coach as well for the Eagles. All right, next up, we've got the Boca Raton Bowl. Toledo taking on Liberty here in this one. We've got Toledo, 1-point favorites, 53.5 the total in this one. I'll give Toledo credit. Finally won and covered. How about that? And it was in the MAC championship game against Ohio. We'll see if they can carry that over into a bowl performance here against Liberty. Of course, when it comes to Liberty here, we've got a situation where we've got coaching change. Hugh Freeze, of course, moving on to other places. And Jamie Chadwell, former Coastal Carolina head coach, who did a great job there, taking over now as the new head coach at Liberty. So a great hire, no question about that. Look, they had to fill the void, obviously, with Hugh Freeze going to Auburn to take over as head coach of the Tigers. And I thought Chadwell's a nice hire. Chadwell's done good work, a nice fit here with Liberty. But again, it's kind of in flux. Who's going to coach the bowl game? Who's going to be calling plays? With Hugh Freeze out, to some of his players that were with him here at Liberty transfer out. There's big question marks here if you're going to back Liberty. And I'm not sure I'm in a rush to back Toledo, as you know. And even though they won that MAC championship game, a lot of that was just inept quarterback play from Harris. They had their quarterback out as Ohio as well, and they just couldn't overcome that. I'm not enamored with the Finn Gleason quarterback combo for Toledo. Like I said, I kind of want to back Liberty, but lots of moving parts with Liberty, and we're going to have to find out more before we get to the window and back the Flames in this one. What do you think here, Connor? Toledo Liberty.
Yeah, I thought that was a lot of, Harris. The pick, it was 7-7. He throws that pick. There goes the field goal. They grab right at halftime, and it's still 10-7 after the third. Score a late touchdown. Just couldn't get it done, in the end. But I wasn't impressed with Finn. But Finn didn't throw a pick, which was huge, which I mentioned. And they didn't go to Gleason at all.
And in a game like that, all you got to do is not turn the ball over, and you're fine, because the other team wasn't doing anything. Yeah,
they just handed it off towards the end once they especially got that touchdown. So, but that doesn't make me want to run and back them here. And Liberty was just like the cluster F of all clusters, this year. It was just up and down. The defense seemed to be okay early. They were bad late. And all the stuff you mentioned, coaching change, who's going to play. Just a total flip right here for me right now, coin flip. It's a wait and see. Same thing with the total. I'd like to go to the over here, just initial, but I'm going to wait too on that.
All right. Next up here, we've got South Alabama and Western Kentucky. South Alabama, 3.5 up to 5-point favorites, 59 the total. I already jumped on the Jaguars here. South Alabama laying the small number. Big news. Allen, the quarterback here for Western Kentucky, is transferring out. He's hit the transfer portal. So that was big news that just broke earlier this morning, that he's moving on out of Western Kentucky. So that is something you want to be aware of here going into this bowl game. They will not have the guy that's been their starting quarterback all season long, Austin Allen, who is moving on from Western Kentucky. So that now all of a sudden becomes a situation where you're going to have to bring a new quarterback into the fold. Chase Wolf, I believe, is going to be, or it's actually going to be, or not Austin Allen, Austin Reed, I should say. Austin Reed it looks like he's transferring out. Now, they haven't updated this on a lot of sites. I believe it's pretty much confirmed that Austin Reed is going to be entering the transfer portal. So, yeah, he's told the school he intends to enter the transfer portal, and he's probably going to go to a Power 5 school. So Austin Reed's availability is probably not going to happen here. He's probably just not going to play in this bowl game. So you got to expect it's going to be one of either Caden Veltkamp or Darius Ocean. Those are the next two quarterbacks up for Western Kentucky. I just think South Alabama is probably a little bit much the better defense. Excellent defensive team. I like the way the Toledo transfer Carter Bradley played all year for them at quarterback. They can run the football as well. And I thought with this announcement that Austin Reed was going to be transferring out, I figured the money was going to come in on South Alabama, and we've seen a little money come in on them. So I decided I'm going to bet it now. I got in at -4. It's up to -5 now. And my guess is if you like South Alabama in this game, it may not hurt you to lock it in right now. What do you think here, Connor? New Orleans Bowl.
Yeah, I don't know what we get with these quarterbacks. That's a question mark. This line's going to keep moving, I think. If you like South Alabama, grab it. I mean, I could see this go to a touchdown. Western Kentucky, still all right football team all the way around. Yeah, this is a wait and see for me because I like South Alabama a little bit, was my lean, but I didn't love it. I'd also lean under. This total's high here. Yeah, the whole thing is that quarterback question here. I don't know what they get, so, right now I am off. Yeah, Richardson going to the NFL.
I'm just seeing that, yes. And I wasn't sure about him because I know there was, but once I saw the other receivers, I should have clued in that, Anthony Richardson probably gone as well. Yeah, he's declared for the NFL draft, so he's probably not playing in that bowl game either against Oregon State. So that is probably also a big factor in the big move toward Oregon State in that
yeah.
game. Yeah, Anthony Richardson probably ain't going to play either. So you can totally understand now why you see all that money moving the way that it is toward Oregon State in that game. All right, Armed Forces Bowl. This is now on Thursday, December 22nd. This is the only bowl game on Thursday, December 22nd. Air Force, Baylor. Baylor 6.5-point favorites, 47 being the total in this game. We got Air Force in the underdog role, and Air Force always seems to show up and play hard and play well in bowl games. In fact, you throw any of these teams in a bowl game, Air Force, Navy, Army, I find the effort is always there in these type of environments. And for Baylor, they finished the season. I don't know. I definitely am probably going to be back in Air Force here. I'll just say that right now. Baylor finished the season poorly, blown out by Kansas State. Just that gut-wrenching loss against TCU. I don't know if they fully recovered from that because they lost the next week against Texas 38-27. And really the only thing Baylor did in that game to keep it close was feast on some Texas turnovers. And now we're going to see what they can do here against this Air Force triple option. The run defense numbers aren't bad for Baylor on the season. Their defense against the run hasn't been horrible, but it's been worse down the stretch. The last 3 games, their run defense numbers have been much worse. They go from 137 rushing yards per game allowed, last 3, 169, and 4.3 yards per carry, way higher than their season average. And that's not what you want to see. You don't want to see your run defense trending in the wrong direction when you're about to play Air Force. Now, as we always say, extra time to prepare for the triple option is usually a good thing. But, we've still seen these service academy schools fare all right in these bowl games. They've all, been. These are teams that I've usually backed. Look at last year, Louisville. They won 31-28 last year in their bowl game under Calhoun, this Air Force team. So they got it done last year in the bowl game. And then before that, when they were in a bowl game, it was a few years ago, Washington State. They beat them 31-21. This has been a good bowl team under Troy Calhoun Air Force. They've been winning and covering more often than not. So I'm looking at the points here with Air Force in this Armed Forces Bowl. Connor, what do you think?
I do too, a little bit. Just initially going through this with Air Force. It's been interesting. Down the stretch, they didn't score a ton. The last few weeks, the defense played well, though, which I thought was good because I thought that defense early on was not very good for Air Force. We'll see if they can, shape in. This is a different type team playing Baylor, which is a lot better. But I don't know how motivated Baylor's going to be in this spot. This seems just right for the dog here as well. So I lean with the Falcons here. I think they can rerun it. The problem is you mentioned the time Baylor has to just sit on this, and just and just practice it all these weeks. So tough one here, but I'll lean the points with Air Force.
You got to question motivation here for Baylor. They're in the Sugar Bowl beating Ole Miss last year, and they go from that to this. Yeah.
This seems like I don't know how motivated they'll be. I just don't know. I mean, it's in Texas, I guess you could say that.
Yeah. Big 12 champions last year, and they go from the Sugar Bowl against Ole Miss and a Big 12 title to not Big 12 champions and the Armed Forces Bowl before Christmas against Air Force. I mean, it's just a downer, in my opinion, for Baylor compared to past year. So definitely all furthering the case, in my opinion, for Air Force in that game.
You got to think Air Force and they're pumped real quick. They want to beat the Baylor team like they've done the last couple of years in these bowl games against these teams. Yeah.
They have, and they've shown up, and they've won and covered. So keep that in mind. All right, Independence Bowl, Houston and UL Lafayette. We've got Houston 5-point favorites here, 60.5, 61 being the total. This is on Friday, December 23rd, 2 days before Christmas. Obviously, look, right in the home state for the Cajuns, this game in Shreveport, Louisiana. So definitely close to home for them. I'm not in a rush to lay. I'm not going to be on Houston. I know that. I'm anti-Houston. You know that. I don't even think Dana Holgerson's bowl track record is all that spectacular in recent years either. So keep that in mind, but not a team that's had the season we expected. I mean, you lose your finale at home to Tulsa, 37-30. We've talked about how this defense has just been pathetic this year. Such high expectations for the team and especially that defense. And they just got ripped apart over and over again on that side of the ball. You talk about defensive discrepancy here. The Cajuns defense, pretty solid overall. And you can't say the same thing about the Houston defense. Houston's definitely better offensively with Clayton Tune, and they can put up points. So we'll see if they're able to here in this game. The total sitting at 60. I kind of lean to the over because I do think Houston can move the ball. And I think the Cajuns, the fact that they get a lot of time off, they'll be able to polish up this offense a little bit. Keep in mind, an offense that has come to life a little bit. They put up 36 against Georgia Southern, Texas State. They put up 41 in their final game. I thought their quarterback, Chandler Fields, was really strong and got better and better for this team at the quarterback spot. That he finally got an opportunity, and boy, he made the most of it down the stretch. His completion rate got better. His touchdown passing rate got better. His quarterback rating went up late in the season. So I think we might get this game over the total, and I definitely lean to the dog here, the Cajuns getting the points. What do you think here, Connor?
I mean, the disappointment with Houston, it's just horrible. This team, he should have been canned a long time ago. I don't even know how he still has his job under there. But they're here. They're a little bit of the better team, but I'm not going to back Houston. No way. No way, no how. You mentioned it. I don't think Houston, they didn't stop really anybody, even a bad team. Navy had 20. That game was 38-20. You got to think Lafayette scores here into the mid-20s. So I'm with you. I kind of lean over, and I want the points right now with Lafayette. I mean, I'll take these points with them. I just don't trust Houston.
Right. I agree with you there. Definitely would lean in toward the underdog here in this one. And again, got better quarterback play finally late in the season from this Louisiana Ragin' Cajuns team. They were definitely better. No question about that with Chandler Fields at quarterback. It ended up being a little bit of a blessing that Ben Wooldridge did the best he could, but the lower body injury allowed Chandler Fields to get back at the quarterback spot, and he's taken advantage of it. This offense has gotten better with Fields under center down the stretch. That's why I think this could go over the total because, again, full season numbers show that Cajuns' offense was not very good. But when Fields came back into the starting spot after the injury to Wooldridge, and we all of a sudden look what they did down the stretch. Very impressive because he didn't play, and he played all of a sudden the last couple of games, and including the Texas State game, they moved the ball with Fields at quarterback. So I think that's another reason why I think we could get that game over the total here, Houston and ULL. All right, next up, we've got the other game taking place Thursday, December 23rd, or Friday, December 23rd, I should say, this game. Gasparilla Bowl, Raymond James Stadium, Tampa, home of the Buccaneers. Wake Forest, Missouri. Wake Forest, 3.5-point favorite, 62 the total in this game. This definitely has the feel of a loose environment. I think both teams are, Missouri 6-6, coming into this game. I think they'll show some effort here in terms of their bowl game when it's all said and done. It definitely is a situation where I think they'll have an offense that can move the ball against Wake Forest. When you look at Missouri, that offense was better down the stretch, starting with the Tennessee game, New Mexico State, Arkansas. I thought that was as good as their offense has looked in a long time with Brady Cook at quarterback. They were able to move the ball through the air, 242 through the air. Brady Cook was a great dual threat quarterback, using his legs as well. Dominic Lovett, a big game in the receiving game for Brady Cook. They moved the ball, and they should be able to against Wake. We know Wake defensively not very good down the stretch, 48-30, 36-35, 34 points given up in their last 5 games. But Wake, I think, offensively can move the ball as well. We know that's their strength with Sam Hartman in that offense. They put up 30-plus points, 31-plus points in their last 3 games to finish the season. More than either side in this game. I'm just looking at the total. Think we get over that number. Think both offenses be able to move the football here. Conor Mac, Gasparilla Bowl, Wake Forest, Missouri. I lean Mizzou a little bit plus the points here in this game, but I like the total even more. What do you think here, Connor?
I like the side better here. I think Missouri is the better football team. Ran the better defense. They came to play. They beat, obviously, Arkansas. A lot of us like that. And they're catching similar points here. Plus 3.5. I think that's too much. I do not think every time Wake Forest laying points like this, just be cautious. And I think why? You have the better defense here in Missouri. And I think with both these teams, motivation, I think is okay. That's why I don't think we're going too crazy. I mean, Wake Forest a little disappointing and on how the year started again and then kind of hit the shits midway. But Missouri here, better defense, plus 3.5. Take it money line as well. I think they win outright.
All right, there we go. Like in Missouri here, Conor Mac with authority, liking them money line as well. All right, Christmas Eve tradition. If you're a lonely fuck like sometimes I am, and on Christmas Eve, and you got nothing else, you got shit to do, you know what you do? And I've done this many years. You tune into the Hawaii Bowl and you bet the Hawaii Bowl. That's what you do on Christmas Eve. It's a Christmas Eve tradition. Christmas Eve night, Hawaii Bowl in Honolulu, Middle Tennessee State, San Diego State. San Diego State, 3.5-point favorites here, 47 being the total in this game. Fascinating because San Diego State, I'll say this right now, San Diego State obviously is in the Mountain West, same conference as Hawaii. They go to Hawaii a lot. Is that, going to be all that exciting for California? They already see enough warm weather, sunshine, in San Diego year round. And plus they play Hawaii most years. Meanwhile, you got Middle Tennessee. They're enthusiastic to be here, but sometimes kids, especially from, Middle Tennessee, they might treat this more like a vacation and, get a little sun in. Vacation. Is it about winning a football game, winning a bowl game? That's the question. That being said, I'm going to dive into just the motivational elements as we get closer to Christmas Eve. We'll find out more, but I'm definitely thinking just if you throw out motivation, you look at the matchup here. I'm not laying points with San Diego State because we know how dreadful they've been laying points. They laid points against New Mexico. They did cover. That was the one really clear piece of evidence that they won and covered as favorites. That and Nevada, two horrendous football teams this year. But they were also favorites to UNLV, didn't cover. Favorites against Hawaii. They were life and death to win that game. And then early in the season, they were favored by 34 against Idaho State. They didn't cover. And then they were 6-point favorites the very first game of the year against Arizona. They lost outright. You want to lay points with San Diego State, go for it. I'm not really excited to do that. Their offense got shut down by Air Force 13-3. And as much as I praised Jalen Maiden, the quarterback here for San Diego State, he's actually given them a bit of a downfield passing game, unlike Burmeister. But that was a rough game against a very good Air Force defense. I like what I saw from Middle Tennessee down the stretch, winning 4 of their last 5 games, and they pretty much needed to win each of their last 3 games to become bowl eligible. There was wonder if they'd get to 6 wins, but they did. Now they did it against weak competition, 2 of them, Charlotte, Florida International. They did beat a pretty good FAU team though, 49-21. But I like what I'm seeing from them offensively. Stockstill's been not a bad bowl coach. He's had some wins, he's had some losses. I'm definitely leaning Blue Raiders. We'll get a better indication of the thought process and the mindset of both teams closer to the game. But right now, my early lean is Middle Tennessee plus the points. Connor, what do you think here? Christmas Eve tradition, the Hawaii Bowl.
Yeah, this one, Middle Tennessee been great to the over. Maybe this is just low enough. And because their defense isn't great. They did have big wins. Even you go back to Miami, tough losses on the road, where they kind of got their ass whipped for the most part. And then they beat FIU that last game by 5. I think they'll be able to score. I kind of lean over. It's just so early, like you're talking about. I want to wait and see. It seemed like I need more points, though, for Middle Tennessee. I've had a question mark on them all year. I've been surprised in a few games, and then they've kind of gone back to their old ways where they look like shit. So, and San Diego State's just been I've just been off, where normally I'd back this team in an under. This team I have not bet much all season long. Why would I want to jump on them now? So yeah, this is a wait and see for me.
Yeah, I would lean over just because San Diego looks, Air Force is a pretty solid defense against the run. And you also look at that game, both teams very slow paced, and you didn't have as many possessions. You only had 16 points, but San Diego State was starting to trend over. The Fresno State game went over the total. San Jose State had 70 points in it. The New Mexico game went over the total. The offense showed some throwing ability with Maiden at quarterback for San Diego State. And this number's low enough that I could see it getting up and over.
And it's been hit and miss, though, their defense, San Diego State. Like, it's been okay, and it just wasn't in some games. So tough to gauge them all year.
Yeah, and Middle Tennessee, as you mentioned, Connor, trending over the total as well. And you can make plays throwing the football. Cunningham's not a bad quarterback at all for Middle Tennessee. He's got an arm. They've got a passing game. And the secondary for San Diego State was vulnerable at times. So I think there might be enough there that you could look maybe toward over the total in this game. All right, so that's Christmas Eve. We move on now to the next day of bowl games is Monday, December 26th. also known as Boxing Day in Canada. Quick Lane Bowl, Ford Field, Detroit. We've got New Mexico State and Bowling Green. New Mexico State 1-point favorites, 49 the total. My first thought is you talk about teams that right away, when the bowl schedule and matchups are announced, you see who is playing, which teams are in bowl games, and you circle who's excited and fired up. And I'm sure going to love the opportunity to be in a bowl game. I think we're going to see that from New Mexico State. I think you're going to see a team that's absolutely excited to be in any bowl game, knowing the shambles that program has been in. They've been one of the worst programs in college football, in FBS college football, the last few years. And to be honest with you, Jerry Kill's done an admirable job. You could say the schedule was very light. I think that they feasted on a very light schedule to get their 6 wins. I mean, their 6 wins came against Hawaii, New Mexico, UMass, Lamar, Valparaiso, and Liberty. Liberty was the big win. That was the most impressive win. But Liberty was in a down spot. All kinds of, they were coming off a couple of crushing losses, and New Mexico State kind of took advantage of that. But no, there's no doubt New Mexico State played better football this year compared to what we've seen. I give them credit. Diego Pavia, the quarterback, I remember him being just pathetic early on in the season. He got better as the season went on. Running the football, throwing it. He's a dual threat quarterback. He's very athletic. They have a couple of receivers that were pretty good. Cordell David, Jonathan Brady down the stretch. I think this is a team that's excited to be in a bowl game. Bowling Green, this is Detroit, Ford Field. This is close to home for them. They were an up and down mediocre team. They did have that nice win against Toledo. But early in the week, or early in the Bulls, early in the process here, December the 5th, way before this bowl game takes place, it's still 3 weeks away. I'm leaning New Mexico State here and the Aggies in this game. I think you're going to get excitement, enthusiasm from this team. They finished the season strong. That's something I factor in when looking at bowl games. I mean, they played their best football down the stretch, 5-1, straight up 5-1 against the spread for the Aggies in their last 6 games. So my early lean in this game is definitely the New Mexico State side. Conor Mac, what do you think?
Yeah, I kind of lean them. I just like how they played towards the end of the year. I thought Bowling Green played better too towards the end of the year, except the last game. It's tough because I think it's under. New Mexico State scored, but I don't think Liberty's defense was, really that good. We talked about earlier. So I lean under here. I think this game could be just slow back and forth. And I kind of lean New Mexico State. It's too early to talk about it, but for me, I'm going to wait and see how these teams look going in. But I kind of lean their way too. They should be pumped. Both teams should be pumped. They got 6, but New Mexico State has just been so awful, like you mentioned. Big win for them against Liberty. They should be hyped in this one. So I kind of lean there early.
Yeah, what a weird season for Scott Loeffler and his Bowling Green team. I mean, they were expected to be a lot better, but the offense with even an experienced quarterback and Matt McDonald was hit or miss pretty much all season long. And the defense was same thing. One game was good, one game was not. So we'll see. I mean, they're obviously capable. Their best, when they bring their best game to the field, they can beat New Mexico State. But I think you're going to get New Mexico State more than excited, and I think they want to come here and win a bowl game because it's been a while. Not only that they've been in a bowl game, but won one, New Mexico State as well. So I think that might incentivize these Aggies players here. All right, we've got 4 games left for this part 1 of our 2-part bowl preview here on the Hitting the Book show. Next Monday, we will be back, by the way, with part 2 of the bowl previews. We'll do all the games from Wednesday, December the 28th onward, including, of course, the playoff games. So make sure you join us next Monday for that. These are the 4 games remaining are on Tuesday, December the 27th. And we will begin with the Camellia Bowl, Montgomery, Alabama, Georgia Southern, and Buffalo. Georgia Southern, 3.5-point favorites, 64 being the total in this game. I mean, you talk about an unimpressive limp your way to the finish line to get into a bowl game. It really doesn't get as unimpressive as what Buffalo did down the stretch. I mean, they blew opportunities to get to a bowl game, blew a game against Central Michigan, blew another game against Kent State, and it looked like they were on pace to lose to Akron last week before they rescued it with a very late game-winning touchdown drive in the 4th quarter to barely beat Akron by a single point as double-digit favorites. I know Conor Mac and I last week on the show, we made the case for Akron. plus the points. Can't trust this Buffalo team right now. And it was a wire-to-wire point spread job for Akron in that game. It's just the defense hasn't been as good. I find the offenses, turn the ball over too much. That's been an issue. 0-4 against the spread coming into this game for Buffalo. Not very good from a point spread standpoint. Georgia Southern, 51-48, thrilling victory against App State in overtime in their final regular season game. What a football game that ended up being. That snapped a 3-game losing streak for them. We'll see if they can carry over that success here to this bowl game. And you know what? I think there's a hidden little element here in this game. We've got Kyle Van Treese, the quarterback of Georgia Southern, a Buffalo transfer. You think he's maybe excited to maybe beat his old team here in this game, play his old team and beat them?
Yes.
I would think so here. So I think that should incentivize. And he's looked like a much better quarterback throwing the ball than he ever did at Buffalo. Of course, that was a run-heavy offense there. They had Patterson. They had some great running backs at Buffalo when he was there, and he just wasn't as polished a pocket passer as he is now. He's developed into one here at Georgia Southern. I think that's a little angle that you want to factor in here to this game. Georgia Southern, of course, last year was a disaster. They turned to Clay Helton, not my favorite coach, but the job he's done here is pretty admirable. The last time we saw Georgia Southern in a bowl 2 years ago, Louisiana Tech, they won and covered, and they won 38-3. I mean, they absolutely destroyed Louisiana Tech in that game. The year before that, they played Liberty in a bowl game. They were 5.5-point favorites. They lost that game, but the year before that, they won their bowl game 23-21 against Eastern Michigan. So seeing a little bit of everything from Georgia Southern. And like I say, I don't bet a ton of favorites the first half of the bowl slate, but this is a favorite I am considering taking, and that is Georgia Southern here, just laying a little bit more than a field goal. What do you think here, Connor?
Yeah, I don't love the little more than the field goal, but I like them too here a little bit. I thought Buffalo, man, talk about, they shouldn't be here, but they got in. I don't want to back this team. They just weren't the same the second half of the year. I thought they got worse defensively. I don't think the offense is very good. And I think Van Treese, wants some revenge. He threw it well, I thought, all year long. Now, this total's high. I think there's points. But I'm worried they're just going to be a little too much on the ground, and this could stay under. Clock might tick, but who knows? I just know there will be some points. I just don't know if it gets over in the end. Buffalo should want to run it, against Georgia Southern. Just hand it off. And it should be close, but I think Georgia Southern, a little bit better team. I don't love the hook here. Something about it, but I think they win this game.
All right, we got the next game on Tuesday, December 27th. It is the First Responder Bowl, Gerald J. Ford Stadium in Dallas. I believe this is the home of the SMU Mustangs, where they play this game. Utah State and Memphis. Memphis 9.5-point favorites in this game, 60-60.5 the total between these two teams. Should see points. I mean, it's the initial lean for me over the total in this game. Two capable offensive teams. Utah State down the stretch, 3 straight overs, 41-34 against Hawaii, 35-31 against San Jose State, 42-23 against Boise State. And the Memphis offense should work with Seth Hennigan at quarterback. I mean, Memphis had a very tumultuous season up and down. I mean, perfectly illustrated by that 6-6 record. Both teams 6-6. Perfectly illustrates their season. Both of them inconsistent up and down. But I think Seth Hennigan for Memphis and the quarterback for Utah State, that of course has been the quarterback pretty much since Logan Bonner got hurt, and that is Cooper Legas, the quarterback for Utah State. He started a bunch of games now enough that I think he's going to be able to make some plays against a Memphis defense that had their share of issues all season. But at the same time, Utah State's defense has certainly been problematic down the stretch, so Hennigan and the Tigers should move it. Not so much involved with the side in this game. I'm not looking to lay 9.5 with Memphis. That's for damn sure. I'd be looking at Utah State plus the points in this game if I were to bet it. I certainly lean that way, but I think I like this total as much, if not more, and I think we'll see points. I like over the total here. Connor, First Responder Bowl, Utah State, Memphis.
Yeah, I like the side here. I do like Utah State, especially if you can still get a 10, more than 10 out there. There's a lot of 9.5s. I liked what Legas did down the stretch. I thought he moved it, and I'm not impressed. There's no way I'm going to lay more than a touchdown with this Memphis football team. No fucking way. I think Utah State's hanging around. Was this season a little disappointing? Yeah, but it got off to such a bad, just so bad. I thought down the stretch they played well. Like even that Boise game, they were in it a lot more than the score showed. And I think they're in it here. Give me the 10 with them.
Yeah, it's a Memphis team.
Tyler should run it.
Big, yeah.
They should be fine here, I think.
Yeah, it's a Memphis team I haven't laid points with at all this year. Why would I start now? Why would I start now? So you're right. Utah State or nothing for me from a side perspective for sure. All right, next game, Birmingham Bowl in Birmingham, Alabama. Captain Obvious. We've got East Carolina and Coastal Carolina. Damn sure isn't Birmingham, England. I'll tell you that. So it had to be Birmingham, Alabama. We've got East Carolina, 7-point favorites here, 63 the total. I'll tell you what, Coastal Carolina, a chance to play an in-state team. I think they're fired up to play East Carolina and beat East Carolina. But now you've got the coaching situation, right? Jamie Chadwell announced this morning, new head coach at Liberty, moving there, coaching in flux, coaching musical chairs. Who's coaching, who's calling plays, who's sticking around? Is Grayson McCall going to play in this game? He played through pain, played through injury in the Sun Belt Championship game against Troy. And I credit that kid, tough as nails to even play in that game, but you could tell he was not at his absolute best, not fully healthy, not fully right, and Troy was just too much for them, really on either side of the football in that Sun Belt Championship game. But I don't doubt Coastal's motivation they'd want to beat East Carolina. I think they'd be fired up still. I just want to see who's going to coach, who's going to call plays. I still think that deep down inside they would be interested in playing East Carolina. They'd be enthusiastic about it. And certainly from East Carolina, I've seen enough chinks in their armor late in the regular season to be concerned about laying a full touchdown with them in this game. The Houston game was a no-show, flat out, 42-3. I still can't explain how they did not show up to play on senior day in that game on their home field against the Houston Cougars. And then, of course, they had the 49-46 win against Temple, which they won in spite of a defense that was not stopping E.J. Warner, the son of Kurt Warner, in that Temple offense. They went up and down the field. Thankfully for them, Holton Ahlers and the East Carolina offense returned fire and basically went up and down the field as well against Temple's defense, and they just scored the last points and got the win, but didn't cover as 9.5-point favorites. So, in terms of this matchup, let's see who's playing at quarterback. Will it be McCall? Will it be one of these other quarterbacks, Carpenter or Guest? And I'll tell you what, neither one was good at all in that James Madison game. So that's concerning if McCall's not in. Will they have a quarterback capable of playing well in this game against East Carolina? But I do think there's some situational, motivational elements that favor the Chanticleers here in this game getting a touchdown. Plus, you have factor in, East Carolina down the stretch, showing you not exactly a team you love laying 7 with at the moment. So lots of talking points. The slightest of leans right now would probably be to Coastal, but I want to see if McCall's playing. I want to see how the coaching situation fleshes itself out with Jamie Chadwell moving on to Liberty, announced earlier this morning. What do you think here, Connor? Birmingham Bowl.
Yeah, all that stuff is so key. I mean, what's going to go on with the coaching staff? Will McCall play? I'm not so sure. This is tough. I still think East Carolina is better. Just that Coastal defense was just shredded at these last 2 games were so bad. But you mentioned the motivation. If McCall's in and they want to beat East Carolina. And, it's a little bit big brother, little brother, and they want to play football with them. So that's why in these bowl games it's tough because still, and I didn't like how East Carolina played down the stretch, like you mentioned. The Temple game, the no-show was Houston. It seemed like that win after BYU. They went there. It just kind of, the season wasn't as good. And that defense was hit and miss on East Carolina. Some games showed up better than others, and other games they got into shootouts. Holton Ahlers, all right quarterback. The offense, he's been there forever. Is solid. It's just too many question marks right now. I can't do anything with this football game.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's a wait and see.
And
see who's at quarterback. Is McCall healthy enough? Is he going to still play? Are they going to shut him down and have him not play in this?
If Guest is in, you can't play it. Like, I'm not going to play Coastal at all. There's just no fucking way.
Yeah, and the thing is too, if they get Bryce Carpenter or Jarrett Guest in at quarterback, part of the reason why I was kind of thought they'd still be okay against James Madison in that game was you had the scheming and the play calling and the offensive wizardry of Chadwell to get them ready. You're not going to have that now. Chadwell's on his way out. He's gone. So, you're going to have someone else trying to coach up one of these quarterbacks if it's not Grayson McCall playing in this game. And that's a downgrade from a coaching standpoint, probably.
And you took two good teams who I thought it depends, pretty good defenses and just all right offenses, blew them out in Troy and JMU. So it was
Maybe it goes over the total because the Coastal's defense has just been borderline pathetic here the last two games. And you would think East Carolina can move the ball. So we'll have to wait and see closer to kick off all the situations in play with this one. All right, our final game for this week's edition of Hitting the Books, the Guaranteed Rate Bowl, also Tuesday, December 27th, Chase Field, Phoenix, Arizona. We've got Oklahoma State, Wisconsin, 4-point favorites, 47.5 being the total in this game. The headline news is for Wisconsin, obviously they've hired their new head coach, Luke Fickell, the new head coach coming over from Cincinnati. So it'll be an interim staff coaching this bowl game for the Badgers. And the other big news is, now this could actually be a positive for Wisconsin based on the way he's played at times for this program, is that Graham Mertz is gone. He's transferring out. He's hit the transfer portal. So no Graham Mertz for Wisconsin, which means Chase Wolf or Miles Burkett are going to end up being the quarterback here for the bowl game against Oklahoma State. Obviously, that'll be determined in the weeks ahead. But it might be addition by subtraction, when things are all said and done here for Wisconsin at the quarterback spot. The bottom line here is I'm definitely not really rushing to lay 4 with Wisconsin, regardless of who's at quarterback in the absence with Mertz obviously moving on. And here's Oklahoma State again, and Mike Gundy in the underdog rule. Now, this is obviously an Oklahoma State team that down the stretch, we didn't see good football from them. Spencer Sanders, when he did play, it didn't seem like he was healthy. He's at least going to get a fair amount of time to rest and recover, assuming he is going to be available for this bowl game. Will he be shut down? We're going to have to wait and see. Right now, in the latest injury report, they've got him as questionable. So, let's see how the bowl practices. Every team has their allotment of bowl practices prior to each game, prior to their bowl game. So let's see if he's there, if he's going to be practicing with the first team offense, get a better sense of how healthy he is. But I've got Oklahoma State circled. That much I will tell you. In this game with Wisconsin 3.5, 4-point favorites, but we'll wait until closer to kickoff to see how their situation is. But I'm definitely leaning Okie State. And plus you've got the interim staff with obviously Leonard not announced as the new head coach. They decided we'll go in another direction, and Fickell now the head coach. So definitely that's kind of a negative for Wisconsin. I'm leaning Okie State, but again, I'm waiting to see the situation and the health status of Spencer Sanders. What do you think here, Connor? Guaranteed Rate Bowl.
Yeah, this is the big games that we're going to get to. Too many question marks for me. But just initially, I want the 4 with Oklahoma State. And that's a team that's not played good football down the stretch. But I don't think Wisconsin's played good football all year. This team was not very good, start to finish. One other problem, Oklahoma State, I think their offense can move it here, especially if Sanders is healthy or whoever plays at quarterback. But you know what their problem has been all year? Penalties. This team was like 130 something. They just shot themselves in the foot all year long was Oklahoma State. But I still think they're the better team here. It's just a wait and see, like you mentioned, on all these moving parts. This is one you need to stay in the rotation, every few days, get the news, see how it's going before you put your bet. Because this could move maybe a little bit either way. But there's just no way right now. Wisconsin can't be pumped for playing in this game either. And be laying more than a field goal? No fucking way. So just initially, the points +4 here with Okie State.
All right, there it is. That's the first half of the bowl schedule. We broke down the entire first half, basically all the games from Friday, December the 16th until Tuesday, December the 27th. Every bowl game during that span. We talked about it right here on today's show. And then next Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern, right here, we'll be back again, Connor and I, and we will do the rest of the bowl schedule for the games on Wednesday, December 28th through until the end, including, of course, the 2 college football playoff semifinal games, TCU versus Michigan and Ohio State versus Georgia. We will preview both of those as well. And we will also preview Clemson's bowl game against Tennessee on that show next week. And I bring up Clemson because breaking news, no shit, Sherlock, after what happened in the ACC championship game.
Yeah.
DJ Uiagalelei is hitting the transfer portal for Clemson.
Yeah.
Could see that coming.
That was happening anyways.
Yeah. It's Cade Klubnik's team now at Clemson. No question about that. And he'll be the quarterback there next year. He'll probably be the quarterback in the bowl game now for Clemson against Tennessee, Cade Klubnik. And you knew the writing was on the wall. DJU is going to move on out. So all that BS about DJU's my guy. Heard it a million times from Dabo. Yeah. Eventually you get to a point
I think he tried to give it to him, for as long as he could. But we're going to see more of that all day today and the next few days. So stay on. I mean, we're getting this out now, but we'll be on the weekend, and then like next week we'll do the second half. So there'll be more news, and shit will get better for us in these games, especially to bet.
Yeah, and unfortunately, look, there's going to be some games that we talked about on today's show where the information is going to get obsolete and stale, and there's going to be all of a sudden one of the teams we talked about, maybe even one of the teams we liked and recommended on this show today, maybe a week from now, quarterback's out, someone else is transferring out, something's happening here, and all of a sudden, so it's very important, when you watch this, archived a week from now or whenever, you keep up with what's taken place with these teams since we've recorded this show today. Very important because things could always change in a hurry when it comes to who's in, who's out, who's coaching this time of year in these bowl games. Hit the like button, everybody on YouTube. We appreciate it very much. We'll wrap up the show in just a second after we hear from Manscaped and Southtown 101.
Turn it up.
Southtown 101, when you're in San Antonio, Texas, stop in. Great food, drinks, live music, DJs, karaoke, Southtown 101, and manscaped.com. Get 20% off your purchase of anything on the website using the promo code PUBSPORTS. That's a wrap for hitting the books for this week. We're back next week, Monday, 1 p.m. Eastern, once again, and we'll hit the second half of the college football bowl game slate. Conor Mac, final words.
Nothing. Shout out to the chat. Shout out to everyone for joining us. Here on this Monday. I know it's early. Not a lot of college football maybe love going around on a day like today. But shout out to the normal guys that are here. Tops, Hepnet and Grapes, Nutflush, Justin, James S., Andrew Carr, Sky Dragon, Don Play, Ronnie, Craig Wood, all the normal guys. Shout out to you guys. Hit the like button. Leo, Real Deal, Prime. Great to see you, my man. The Grinder. I haven't seen him in a while. Rants. Shout out to everyone. Thanks for joining us. That's it.
And the exact
Check
same.
us later.
Yes, exactly. Net profit for Conor and I. It's going to be a short show. We're going to be in and out. I'm not sticking around too long today at 5 p.m. Eastern. It's a very, very small card. We'll rip through the games quickly. We'll be in and out in 15, 20 minutes, honestly, on net profit. So blink and you'll miss the show today at 5 p.m. Eastern time. But tomorrow we'll have a bigger card to go through. And, of course, I'll be back on NBA Pub Up as well. And we're going to preview the same set of bowl games, the same ones, Friday, December 16 to Tuesday, December 27, this Saturday morning as well. College football pub up, and we'll bring in Big Ragu, DJ Big Boss as well. And we'll have more information probably by this Saturday to go with for some of these early bowl games. So make sure you tune in for that. And we'll also preview Army-Navy, of course, this Saturday as well. College football pub up. We got 2 more Saturday shows left as well, this Saturday and next Saturday with that as well. And next Monday is our final Hitting the Books show of the year. So you don't want to miss it. It's our season finale, if you will, next Monday, right here on Hitting the Books at 1 p.m. Eastern time. For Conor Mac, big show, great job behind the scenes as well. I'm Ian Cameron. Have a great Monday. Enjoy the games and good luck and a great week. And we will see you again next Monday, 1 p.m. Eastern for another edition of Hitting the Books right here on Pub Sports Radio.
Welcome to another edition of The Barking Dead.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of ECL on
Class is in session.